So in chapter 13, we talked about some dynamics with small group communication. In chapter 14, we're more going to discuss some leadership roles that people take, and then also just general member roles that people take in group projects. Again, this is information that you're going to have to refer back to as you're working on your group project reflection paper. So make sure you take the time to read chapter 14. So, chapter 14 begins with a discussion on how leaders emerge, and they can emerge in a variety of different ways. We're going to talk about 5 of them, although that list certainly isn't exhaustive. The first are designated leaders. So, this is somebody who's assigned to their role, either by somebody that is in a superior position over them, or it could be by the general public. So, if you think about elected officials or appointed officials, those are designated leaders who have been assigned to lead in that role in a variety of formats. Second are emergent leaders. So that is somebody who emerges naturally through engagement with the group. So they show themselves as somebody who can be a strong leader, can keep people organized, is somebody who is able to know certain information and is known for accomplishing tasks in and of their group itself. So you may have noticed at different times in a workplace if somebody might emerge as a leader on how to do something, and they just become the natural leader of the group. The third way that leaders emerge are simply based on the trait approach to leadership. And what this looks at is that sometimes people emerge as leaders based on traits that they have, whether or not that's a personality characteristic. So they have very strong organizational skills, could be very charismatic, could be have an attractive appearance. All of those things have been shown to really identify and influence who we see as leaders in a group. The fourth approach is the situational approach to leadership, and it just argues that different types of leaders are needed in different types of situations. So, while it might be good to have a very task oriented leader when you're trying to accomplish a goal in a certain time frame, that might not be the best leader when there are more relationship needs that are in the group that are there. So, the situation can really influence the type of leader who would be best for that situation. And then the last one is communication skills competence, very similar to the trait approach to leadership. It argues that people that have a very strong communication skills, both in terms of presentation skills, interpersonal interactions, and conflict management, usually emerge as a leader or somebody who can take charge in a group. Chapter 14 also talks about different types of leadership styles. And this is one of the things, if you remember, situational leaders, depending on the situation, you might need a directive leader or a supportive leader. And so there are certainly different types of leadership styles. The first is a directive leader. This is somebody who's very hands-on in terms of setting rules and expectations. They keep a schedule and an agenda. They provide specific guidance. Sometimes that's very helpful, and other times it can lead to things like micromanagement, which becomes an issue for some people. Participative leaders are ones that really encourage and include group members in the decision-making process. They seek opinions and feedback and try to make the best decisions. Some influences or some negatives that can happen from that is that if a decision is needed to be made quickly, it can be harder to do that because they want to please everyone. And so there are some disadvantages to that as well. Supportive leaders show concern for group members' needs and emotions. So while there may be a task that we're trying to accomplish, their main concern is how people are feeling and if they feel supported, that's there. And there are certainly times that that's very important and a very important type of leadership skill to have, but also can be distracting from the actual goal that we're trying to achieve. And then achievement oriented leaders strive for excellence. So they set very, very challenging goals for the group and then just expect the group to meet those and really work towards that goal. That's great for people that are high achievers and trying to achieve that, but it may mean that you're sacrificing some of the relationship needs that are in a group itself. So different types of leadership styles have different strengths and benefits. There are some people who can navigate between multiple types of leadership styles that are there. Other things that we're going to talk about in this chapter are some types of power that people have. So, legitimate power is when we officially recognize somebody as powerful based on the role that they serve, the status that they have, or a title. So, some examples of that is that we may look at our governing officials as somebody who has legitimate power, may also look at people that are we see as powerful. So, maybe police officers in that area. Expert power comes from somebody's knowledge, skills, or expertise. This can be just a group member. So I may not be, the designated leader for a group, but if we are talking about social media and that's something that I know a lot about, then I may emerge as somebody who has expert power that people listen to in that situation. Referent power comes from somebody's attractiveness, likability, or charisma, and we see this happen all the time. There are people that we listen to or give more credence to because they sound good or they look good in what they're saying, or they're just somebody that's really likable, and so we want to follow them. Information power is somebody who has access to information, especially in networks. If there's a person that has the ability to navigate in and out of those networks to really glean information that's helpful for the group, they may have some instance of power in that way. And then the last type of power that we're going to talk about is reward and coercive power. And this is usually somebody who is in an assigned leadership role that has the ability to give awards or punishment. So if you think of somebody as a boss that can, give raises or benefits or vacation time, or somebody that has the ability to give punishment. So they're able to use some coercive power there that if you don't do this, you get written up or fired. So these are just some different types of power that we see exhibited in a group. It's important to remember that while somebody might be the leader of the group, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have power. And based on these things, different people can have more power in the group than the leader. Some group member roles that you're going to want to pay special attention to as you're looking at chapter 14 are task related goals, maintenance roles, and negative roles. And if you go back and read chapter 14, it goes through a variety of different types and examples of those roles. We're just going to highlight some of the common themes among them. I'm not going to spend time going through the individual roles themselves. So task-related goals contribute directly to the task or goal you're trying to accomplish. Typically, you see these as leadership roles, so they're trying to organize the group. Procedural roles, so they're trying to make sure we all understand what the process is for how we're going to function, and then informational functions as well. So are they taking notes, keeping everybody on task, providing different pieces of information that are helpful? Maintenance roles are more focused on creating and maintaining group cohesion and interpersonal needs of the group. So they try to bring everybody together. They try to include and increase motivation. And then they also are people that are strong at dealing with conflict or trying to help individual group members deal with interpersonal conflict they have. And then the last type of roles we're going to talk about are negative roles. So these are roles that distract from the group in some way. They're roles that we don't want, but oftentimes are seen in groups. And there's two types of those roles here. The first are self-centered roles. So that's where the person is trying to draw attention away from the group to the individual group member. And then the second type are unproductive roles. So they're trying to halt or stop the production of the group in some way. So they may be overly critical of what's happening, or they may say all the ideas are bad, those sorts of things. So again, there are several types of self-centered negative roles and several types of unproductive roles that you'll want to look at. This is just a highlight of those. And then the last section of chapter 14 talks about some problem solving in groups. And one of the things that I want to highlight here are just the 5 steps that we should go through when you're trying to solve problem in a group. The first and most important step is to define the problem. Oftentimes what I see as the problem may not be what you see. So we want to make sure we're all on the same page as to what problem we're actually dealing with. We want to analyze that problem, look at what it affects, all the workload it affects, how it affects things interpersonally, and just kind of analyze the effects and impacts that the problem is having. The third step is you want to generate possible solutions. What's important here is that it's a brainstorming activity. You want to come up with a lot of solutions. You don't want to stop to evaluate those at this time. You want to try to generate possible solutions because usually it lets us look at more options that are available. Next is you want to evaluate the solutions. So from the solutions that we had, which ones do we think would be most effective at implementing and solving the problem that we're addressing? And then the final step is that we're going to implement the solution that we choose. And then we're also going to assess whether or not that solution addressed the problem. So that's chapter 14 that looks at different roles that groups have, different leadership styles, and then way to address some problems. Again, you'll need to refer to this as you're working on your group reflection paper. So if you have any questions at all about information in chapter 14, please don't hesitate to let me know. Thanks.